The day my parents' lawyer called me, I thought my life was about to change. I was sitting alone in my tiny apartment in California, staring at unpaid bills, cold coffee, and a future that felt like it was slowly disappearing. Then I heard the words that would completely rewrite my life. "Ashley Faith Collins, your parents left you something." I smiled for a second. A house, some savings, maybe something that could finally help me breathe again. But then he said it. "A forgotten cabin deep in Northern California." I laughed, not because it was funny, because I didn't know what else to do. A broken old cabin, that was my inheritance. My parents had spent their whole lives building memories, working hard, and keeping secrets, and all they left me was a place everyone in town called the abandoned shack in the woods. When I told people, they laughed. "Oh, Ashley, maybe your parents wanted you to learn a lesson." "Girl, that cabin is probably falling apart. You should sell the land and forget about it." Even my closest friends thought I was crazy, but they didn't know what I knew. My parents never did anything without a reason. And the last time I saw my father, just days before he passed away, he held my hand tightly and whispered something I never understood. "Promise me you'll open the door, Ashley." At the time, I thought grief was making me hear things. I thought it was just a goodbye from a father who knew he was leaving. But months later, standing in front of that forgotten cabin surrounded by tall trees, broken fences, and years of dust, I realized my father wasn't saying goodbye. He was giving me a mission. And inside that cabin was something nobody in town expected. Something that would make the people who laughed at me go completely silent. Because my parents didn't leave me a worthless old cabin. They left me a story. A story that had been hidden for decades. And when I finally discovered what was behind that locked wooden door, I couldn't stop crying. Welcome back to Inspired Real Events, where ordinary people meet impossible family and the quiet ones learn the loudest lessons. If betrayal, gratitude, and slow burn justice are your thing, you're in the right place. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from, and be sure to subscribe. My name is Ashley Faith Collins. I was 35 years old when everything I believed about my family changed forever. Growing up, people always said I was lucky. They saw the smiling family photos. They saw my parents, Daniel and Emily Collins, holding hands at every event, laughing together and supporting me through every difficult moment. People thought we had a perfect life, but the truth was different. Every family has hidden chapters. Some are filled with happiness, some are filled with pain. And some are buried so deeply that even the people closest to you never discover them. My parents lived a simple life. They weren't wealthy. They didn't own fancy cars. They didn't travel around the world. But they had something many people spend their whole lives searching for: peace. My father loved old wooden furniture, fixing broken things, and telling stories about the past. My mother loved flowers, handwritten letters, and making every stranger feel like family. They taught me that kindness mattered more than money, that memories mattered more than possessions, and that sometimes the smallest things could hold the biggest secrets. When I was a little girl, my father would disappear for a few days every year. I always asked him where he went. He would smile and say, "Just visiting an old friend." I never questioned it. Kids believe what their parents tell them. But as I got older, I noticed something strange. Whenever I asked about that trip, my father would become quiet. My mother would look at him with a worried expression. Then they would change the subject. I always wondered why. Years passed. I went to college. I started my career. I moved away. Life became busy. The little mysteries from childhood became forgotten memories. Until the day my parents died. That day still feels unreal. A phone call, a hospital room, a doctor looking at me with sad eyes, a world that suddenly became too quiet. I lost both of them within the same year, and after that I felt like I had lost the two people who knew me better than anyone. For months I struggled. Every corner of my apartment reminded me of them. A coffee mug my mother gave me, an old jacket that still smelled like my father's favorite cologne, a handwritten birthday card I couldn't bring myself to throw away. Then came the lawyer's letter. At first, I thought it was about paperwork. I expected bank accounts, documents, maybe some family photos, But when I arrived at his office, he placed a folder on the desk. He looked at me and said, "Ashley, your parents wanted you to receive this after they were both gone." My hands started shaking. Inside the folder was a property document, a cabin, a small piece of land hidden in the mountains of California. The address meant nothing to me. I stared at the paper, then I laughed softly. "A cabin?" The lawyer nodded. "Yes." I looked at him, waiting for the joke. There wasn't one. "My parents left me a cabin." "Yes, Ashley." I leaned back in my chair. I didn't know whether to cry or laugh. My parents knew I was struggling. They knew I was trying to rebuild my life. Why would they leave me something nobody had touched in years? The lawyer slowly pushed another envelope toward me. This was attached to the property documents. My heart started beating faster. It had my name on it, Ashley Faith Collins. The handwriting was my father's. I knew it instantly. My fingers touched the envelope, and suddenly I felt like I was 8 years old again, sitting beside him at the kitchen table. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single piece of paper, only a few sentences. "Ashley, if you are reading this, it means we are no longer there to guide you. I'm sorry we kept this from you. But you are the only person who can finish what we started. Go to the cabin. Open the door. Trust what you find. Love, Dad." I read it again and again. My eyes filled with tears. What did he mean? What had they started? Why did they hide an entire cabin from me? That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about one sentence. Open the door. The next morning I packed a bag. I didn't know what I was looking for. I didn't know what secrets waited for me. I only knew one thing. My father had spent his entire life protecting whatever was inside that cabin. And now, it was my turn to find out why. The drive to the cabin took almost 5 hours. 5 hours of winding roads, quiet forests, and thoughts I couldn't control. Every mile took me farther away from the life I knew and closer to a place I had never even heard about until a few days ago. I kept asking myself the same question. Why would my parents hide this from me? I knew them. Or at least, I thought I did. My father was the kind of man who would tell me everything. When my first car broke down, he spent the whole night fixing it with his old tools and a flashlight. When I had my first heartbreak, he sat on the porch with me for hours and said, "Sometimes losing something teaches you what you truly deserve." He was my protector, my guide, my hero. So why was he hiding an entire chapter of his life from me? The road became smaller. The trees became taller. The signal on my phone disappeared. And for the first time, I started feeling like I was stepping into a world that had been forgotten. After another hour, I finally saw the sign. "Welcome to Redwood Hollow." The small town looked like something from an old movie. A little grocery store, a gas station, a few wooden houses, people sitting outside drinking coffee and talking about everyone's business. I stopped at the gas station because I needed directions. The moment I mentioned the cabin's address, the man behind the counter froze. Smile disappeared. "Colin's cabin," I nodded. "Yes, do you know it?" He looked at me for a few seconds, then he quietly said, "That place has been empty for a long time." I forced a smile. "I know, I inherited it." His eyebrows lifted. "You're Daniel and Emily Collins' daughter." Hearing my parents' names from a stranger felt strange. "Yes." The man looked down. "Your father was a good man." The way he said it made my stomach tight. "Was?" He quickly looked away. "I mean, he was." I waited. But he didn't say anything else. I grabbed my things and started walking toward the door. Before I left, he called out, "Ashley." I turned around. "Be careful up there." I smiled nervously. "Why?" He hesitated. Then he said something that stayed in my mind the entire drive. "Some places hold memories and some places hold secrets." I didn't answer. I just left. The road to the cabin was almost impossible to find. Trees covered the old path. Branches scratched against my car. The further I drove, the more isolated everything became. Then finally I saw it. The cabin. My heart dropped. It was smaller than I imagined. The paint was peeling. The windows were dusty. The wooden steps looked like they could break at any moment. It didn't look like an inheritance. It looked like a place everyone had abandoned. I parked the car and stepped outside. The air was cold, quiet, too quiet. I stood there holding my father's letter. "Open the door." I whispered the words to myself. Then I walked forward. The closer I got, the more emotional I felt. This place had been waiting for me. I reached the front door. The lock was old. I expected it to be broken. But when I touched it, I noticed something. The key was already there. My father had left it hidden under a small wooden box beside the door. My hands started shaking. How long ago had he planned this? How long had he known I would come here? I unlocked the door. It opened with a loud wooden sound. Kriyak. A wave of cold air hit my face. Inside was darkness. Dust covered everything, an old chair, a small fireplace, a table with a layer of dirt. It looked exactly like nobody had been there for years. I stepped inside slowly. "Dad!" The word escaped my mouth before I could stop it. For 1 second, I felt like he was going to answer, like he would walk out from another room and say, "Surprise, Ashley." But there was only silence. My eyes started filling with tears. I missed him. I missed my mother. I missed the life I used to have. I walked around the cabin. Everywhere I looked, there were pieces of the past, an old picture frame, a broken clock, a shelf full of books. Then I noticed something strange, a small table near the fireplace. On it was a photo. I picked it up. My breath stopped. It was my father, but he looked much younger. Standing beside him was a woman I had never seen before. They were standing in front of this exact cabin. I turned the photo around. There was writing on the back. October 1989, the beginning of everything. My heart started racing. Everything? What did that mean? I searched the table. Under the photo was another envelope. This one was older. The paper was yellow. The handwriting wasn't my father's. It was my mother's. I opened it carefully. Inside was a letter. "Ashley, if you found this, your father kept his promise. There are things we never told you because we wanted to protect you. But the truth always finds its way home. Before you leave this cabin, you need to see what is underneath the floor." Underneath the floor, I stopped breathing. I looked down. The cabin suddenly felt different. This wasn't just an old house. It was hiding something my parents never wanted anyone else to find. I moved the furniture away from the center of the room. My hands were trembling. The wooden floor was old, but one board looked different. Newer, cleaner, like someone had opened it recently. I grabbed the edge. I pulled. Nothing happened. I pulled harder. Then suddenly the board moved. A dark space appeared underneath. And inside was a small metal box. My heart was pounding. I reached down and lifted it out. It was heavier than I expected. There was no name, no label. Only one thing carved into the top. My family name, Collins. I stared at it. Why would my parents hide this? What was inside? I slowly opened the box. And the first thing I saw was a stack of letters. Hundreds of them. All written to one person. A person whose name made my entire body freeze, because the letters were addressed to Ashley Faith Collins. For a few seconds, I couldn't move. I just stared at the name, my name, written over and over again on hundreds of old envelopes. Ashley Faith Collins. My fingers went numb. The cabin suddenly felt smaller. The air felt heavier. I looked around like someone was watching me, like my parents were standing somewhere in the shadows, waiting for me to understand. But I was alone, completely alone. I picked up the first envelope. The paper was old. The edges were worn. The handwriting was familiar. My mother's. I whispered, "Mom, what did you do?" I opened it carefully. The letter inside was dated 20 years earlier. "Ashley, if you are reading this, then we didn't get the chance to tell you everything ourselves. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for every question we avoided. Every time you asked about the cabin. Every time you wondered why your father disappeared. You deserved the truth." I stopped reading. My eyes filled with tears. Because suddenly all those childhood moments came rushing back. The unanswered questions. The strange conversations that stopped when I entered the room. The way my parents looked at each other whenever the cabin was mentioned. They weren't hiding the cabin. They were hiding a story. I continued reading. "Your father and I didn't buy this cabin for ourselves. We bought it for someone else. Someone who changed our lives forever. Someone we promised we would never forget." My heart started beating faster. Someone else? Who? I grabbed another letter, then another. Each one revealed small pieces of a mystery, but none of them gave me the full answer. It felt like my parents had created a trail, a path, a puzzle, and they wanted me to solve it. Then I found one letter that looked different. It was thicker. The envelope was sealed with a small red mark. On the front, my mother wrote, "Open this only when you are ready." I laughed softly. Ready. How could I be ready for something I didn't even understand? But I opened it. Inside was a photograph. My hands started shaking. It was my parents, but they weren't alone. Standing between them was a little girl, maybe 6 years old. She was smiling, holding my mother's hand. I looked closer. There was something familiar about her, something I couldn't explain. I turned the photo around. My mother had written, "Family is not always created by blood." My breathing stopped. What did that mean? I searched through the box again. Under the letters was a small journal. A journal with my father's name on it, Daniel Collins. I opened the first page. The date was from 30 years ago. My father's handwriting filled the pages. October 12, 1989. Today I met someone who changed everything. Her name is Lily. She is only 6 years old. And she has no one left in this world. I froze. Lily, the little girl in the photo. I kept reading. Her parents died in an accident. Everyone said she would be sent away. Nobody wanted to take responsibility. But Emily looked at me and said something I will never forget. She deserves someone who chooses her. My eyes filled with tears. I turned the page. The next entry made my heart hurt. November 4, 1989. We brought Lily to the cabin today. She was scared at first. She thought every goodbye meant she would be abandoned again. But Emily held her hand and told her, "You are not alone anymore." I covered my mouth. My parents had never told me this. They had another daughter, another child, another family member. How could I not know? I kept reading. Years passed. The journals showed a story of love. My parents didn't just visit the cabin. They built a second life there. They helped Lily. They gave her a home. They became her family. But then I found the entry that changed everything. August 7, 1996. Today we received terrible news. Lily's biological family has returned. They want her back. They say they made a mistake, but Lily is afraid. She thinks everyone she loves will disappear. I turned the page quickly. The next pages were missing. Someone had torn them out. My heart sank. Why? What happened? I searched the box. Nothing, no answers, just missing pages. Then I noticed something underneath the journal. A small key. Attached to it was a note, my father's handwriting. "Ashley, the missing pages are not in the journal. They are somewhere you would never think to look." The key opened something inside the cabin. I stood up slowly. I looked around. My eyes moved across the walls, the fireplace, the shelves, the old furniture. What was I missing? Then I remembered something. When I first entered the cabin, I saw something strange. A painting hanging crooked on the wall. I walked toward it. My heart started pounding. I removed the painting. Behind it was a small metal door. I stared at it. A hidden room. My father had hidden a room inside this cabin. I inserted the key. Click. The lock opened. The door slowly moved. Inside was a small space. Dark, cold, forgotten. But there was something sitting in the middle, a wooden chair. And on that chair was a box with my name on it. I walked closer. The label said, "For Ashley, when she finally learns the truth." My hands were shaking because now I knew. My parents weren't just leaving me a cabin. They were leaving me the truth about a person they loved. A person they had protected for decades. I opened the box. Inside was a single videotape, and written on it were 4 words. "Watch this alone." I looked at the old tape. I didn't even know if it would work. But somehow, I knew this was the moment my entire understanding of my family was about to change. I found an old television in the corner. I connected the tape. The screen flickered. Static filled the room. Then suddenly my father appeared, older, tired, but smiling. My heart broke because I hadn't seen his face in months. I whispered, "Dad," the video started, and his first words made me cry. "Ashley, if you're watching this, it means you finally found the cabin." He paused, then looked directly into the camera. "I'm sorry I kept this from you." The screen flickered. My father took a deep breath. "There is something about our family you need to know." Then he said the sentence that changed everything. "You have a sister." The words echoed through the cabin. "You have a sister." I stared at the screen. I waited for my father to laugh. I waited for him to say it was some kind of misunderstanding. But he didn't. His face stayed serious. His eyes looked tired, like he had carried this secret for a lifetime. I slowly sat down on the old wooden chair. My hands covered my mouth. A sister? How was that possible? I spent 35 years believing I was an only child. I grew up thinking my parents' love belonged only to me. Every birthday, every holiday, every family memory. And now I was discovering that there was an entire person connected to me who I never knew existed. My father continued speaking from the old video. Ashley, before you feel hurt, please understand something. We never hid her because we didn't love you. My eyes filled with tears. Then why? I whispered. Of course, the version of my father on the screen couldn't answer me, but somehow it felt like he knew exactly what I was asking. We hid this because we were afraid. The video paused for a moment. My father looked away from the camera. Then he continued. Fear makes people do strange things. Sometimes people think they are protecting the ones they love, but they don't realize the silence can hurt too. That sentence hit me harder than anything. Because it was true. My parents had always protected me, but they had also kept me away from a part of my own family. The video continued. Her name is Lily Rose Carter. I repeated the name quietly. Lily, the little girl from the photograph, the girl my parents rescued, the girl they promised never to abandon. My father looked into the camera. She was 6 years old when we met her. She had lost everything, her parents, her home, her sense of safety. He swallowed. Remember the first night she stayed at the cabin? She stood by the door holding a small bag of clothes. She kept asking when she had to leave. My eyes burned. My father smiled sadly. She thought every good thing had an ending. I wiped away a tear. But your mother changed that. The video showed another old photo, my mother holding Lily, both of them laughing. She became the daughter we never gave birth to. I looked at the picture, and for the first time I didn't feel angry. I felt something else. Sadness, because I realized my parents had carried this love quietly for years, a love they never stopped having. My father continued. Ashley, I know you might feel confused, maybe even betrayed. I nodded because I did. I understand. The honesty in his voice broke me, but Lily was never a secret because she was shameful. He looked down. She was a secret because the situation was complicated. The screen became darker. The video quality was getting worse. Then my father said something that made my heart stop. Because one day, Lily disappeared. I froze. The room became completely silent, disappeared. What happened? I whispered. My father continued. After years together, Lily's biological relatives came back. They wanted custody. They said they had changed. He sighed. We fought for her. The pain in his voice was obvious. But the court made a decision. I held my breath. And Lily left. A tear rolled down my face. I imagined a little girl leaving the only home she knew, leaving the people who loved her. My father looked directly into the camera. She promised she would come back. The video paused. Then he said, but she never did. The tape went quiet. I thought that was the end. But then my father appeared again, a different day, a different recording. He looked older. The sadness in his eyes was deeper. Ashley, if you found the letters you know about Lily. He leaned closer. But there is something you don't know. My heart started racing. What? My father took a deep breath. Your mother and I never stopped looking for her. The screen flickered. We searched for years. He pulled out a folder. We found pieces of her life. My heartbeat became faster. She became an artist. A photograph appeared, a young woman painting. She moved across the country. Another photo. She built a life. Another photo. Then my father became quiet. But she never knew something. I leaned closer. What? My father looked directly at me. She never knew she had a little sister. I stopped breathing. He was talking about me. She never knew about you. The video ended. The screen went black. I sat there in the darkness. My entire life had changed in less than 1 hour. I wasn't an only child. My parents weren't just ordinary parents. And this forgotten cabin wasn't just an old building. It was the place where my family's biggest secrets lived. I stood up. I needed answers. I searched through the hidden room again, the letters, the photos, the journal. Then I found something underneath the old box, a newspaper clipping. My hands trembled as I picked it up. The headline read, Local artist RETURNS to California after DECADES away. Below it was a picture. A woman standing beside her artwork, a woman with familiar eyes. My eyes widened. Because even though I had never met her, I knew that face. It looked like my mother. It looked like my father. It looked like me. The article had a name, Lily Rose Carter. I sat down slowly. My sister was alive, and she was closer than I ever imagined. Then I noticed something written at the bottom of the article, a location, a gallery in California, and a date. The opening was happening tomorrow. I looked out the cabin window. The sun was setting behind the trees. For the first time since arriving, I felt something different. Not fear, not confusion, hope. Tomorrow, I was going to meet the sister I never knew existed. But what I didn't know was that Lily had been searching for my parents too, and she had a secret of her own. I barely slept that night. The old cabin creaked with every sound. The wind moved through the trees like whispers from the past. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, holding the newspaper article in my hands. Lily Rose Carter, my sister, a woman I had never met, a person who shared my family, my memories, and a piece of my heart without even knowing I existed. It felt impossible. How could someone be part of your story and still be a stranger? I kept thinking about my parents. About all the times they smiled at me, all the times they hugged me. Did they feel guilty? Did they want to tell me? Were they afraid I would hate them? A million questions were running through my mind, but one thing was clear: I needed to meet Lily. The next morning, I drove to the gallery listed in the newspaper. My hands were shaking the entire way. I didn't know what I was going to say. "Hi, I'm Ashley. I'm your sister." It sounded crazy. What if she didn't believe me? What if she was angry? What if she hated my parents? When I arrived, the place was beautiful, a small art gallery surrounded by trees and flowers. People were walking inside, admiring paintings. I stood outside for a moment, gathering courage. Then I saw her. She was standing near a painting, a woman in her early 40s, dark brown hair, a gentle smile, and eyes that looked strangely familiar. My heart stopped. Because those eyes, they were my father's eyes. I knew immediately that was Lily. I walked inside. She looked at me. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then she smiled politely. "Can I help you?" My throat became dry. I held the old photograph in my hand, the one from the cabin. "I think you knew my parents." Her expression changed. The smile disappeared. "What did you say?" I slowly handed her the picture. The moment she saw it, her hands started shaking. "Where did you get this?" I whispered. "My parents left it for me." She looked at me. "Your parents?" I nodded. "Daniel and Emily Collins." The color left her face. She stepped back. "No," the word came out quietly. "No, that's not possible." People around us continued looking at paintings, unaware that two lives were changing forever. I took a deep breath. "My name is Ashley Faith Collins." Her eyes filled with tears. She looked at me like she was searching for something, like she was trying to recognize a memory. Then she whispered, "Ashley." Hearing my name from her felt unreal. "How do you know my name?" She covered her mouth, and then the tears came. "I spent years wondering if they ever had another child." My heart broke. "You knew about me," she nodded slowly. "Not you exactly." She looked at the photograph. "Your father told me once that he wanted to have a daughter." I felt a sharp pain in my chest. "He said he hoped she would be kind, brave, someone who would make the world better." I looked away, trying not to cry. Because that sounded exactly like my father. Lily sat down. I sat across from her. For the next hour, she told me a story I never knew, a story about a little girl who was afraid of being forgotten. She told me about the cabin, about my parents, about the nights my mother made hot chocolate and my father taught her how to fix broken furniture. "They saved me," Lily said, her voice cracked. "They didn't have to choose me, they could have walked away." I wiped my tears. "But they didn't." Her head. "No," she smiled sadly. "They loved me like I was their own." Then she looked at me. "And now I understand why they never told you." I frowned. "Why?" She looked down. "Because they were afraid." "Afraid of what?" She took a deep breath. "Afraid you would feel like they replaced you." My eyes widened. I immediately shook my head. "I would never think that." "I know," she whispered, "but they didn't know that." Silence filled the room. Then Lily reached into her bag. She pulled out a small envelope. My heart started beating faster. "I have something too." She placed it on the table. "My father gave this to me before he passed away." I looked at the envelope. The handwriting was familiar, my father's. My hands trembled. "Why do you have a letter from my dad?" She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "Because he found me years ago." I froze. "What?" Lily nodded. "He found me." My heart raced. "Then why didn't he tell me?" She looked away. "Because I asked him not to." I couldn't understand. Why? She took a deep breath. Because I was scared. The room became silent. I was afraid of coming back. She looked at the old photo. I spent my whole life believing I lost one family. A tear rolled down her cheek. But then I realized I was afraid of finding another one. I reached across the table. I held her hand. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I wasn't alone. But then Lily opened the letter, and the first line made both of us freeze. It said, "Ashley and Lily, if you are reading this together, then the secret we protected for so long has finally brought you home." I looked at Lily. She looked at me, because suddenly we both understood. The cabin wasn't the end of the mystery. It was only the beginning, and my parents had left one final truth behind. Lily and I sat there silently. Two sisters, two strangers, two people connected by a story neither of us knew existed. The letter was sitting between us on the table. My father's handwriting, my mother's love. A final message from two people who were no longer here to explain themselves. I was scared to open it, not because I didn't want the truth, because I was afraid of what the truth might take away. For years, I thought my family was simple. My parents, me, our little world. But now I realized my family was much bigger than I ever knew. Lily looked at me. "You should open it." I nodded slowly. My fingers touched the paper. The moment I opened the letter, I felt like my parents were sitting beside me again. "Ashley, if you and Lily are reading this together, then something happened that we always hoped for. You found each other." I stopped for a second. My eyes filled with tears. My father knew. He knew this moment would happen. He continued. "We spent many years believing we had to protect both of you from pain, but we learned something important. Love protected by silence can still create loneliness." I looked at Lily. She wiped her tears. That sentence hurt because it was true. My parents were trying to protect us, but in doing so, they separated two people who needed each other. The letter continued. "Lily, I want you to know something. You were never a mistake. You were never a temporary part of our lives. You were our daughter." My hands covered my mouth. I looked at Lily. She was crying silently. For decades, she had carried the fear that she was only someone my parents helped. But my father's words were different. They were choosing her again, even after death. The letter continued. "Ashley, I know this may be difficult to understand. You may wonder why we didn't tell you. The truth is, we were afraid of losing you, not because we thought you were unkind, but because we knew how much you loved us. We didn't want you to feel like we had a life without you." I closed my eyes. A tear rolled down my cheek, because suddenly I remembered something. When I was 16, my father once told me, "A family is not measured by how many people sit at the table. It is measured by how much love is placed on it." I never knew what he meant, until now. The letter continued. "There is one more thing you both need to know." Lily looked at me. My heart started beating faster. What else could there be? The cabin was not just a place where we kept memories. It was a place where we built a promise to help people who felt forgotten. I frowned. Help people, I kept reading. "Your mother and I spent many years helping children who had nowhere to go. The cabin became a safe place, a place where people could heal, a place where nobody had to feel abandoned." I looked at Lily. She whispered, "That's why the cabin always felt special." I nodded. Then I remembered something. The town. The people who warned me, the people who laughed, they didn't know. They only saw an old broken cabin. They didn't see the lives that had been changed inside. The letter continued. "We left the cabin to you because we believe you both understand what it means to lose something, and what it means to find something again. We want you to decide what happens next, not us. You, love, Mom and Dad." I slowly folded the letter. Neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was peaceful. Then Lily smiled, a small, broken, beautiful smile. "Your parents were incredible." I nodded. "They were." She looked at me. "No," she shook her head. "They were our parents." Those words hit me, our parents, not mine, not hers, ours. I started crying, not because I was sad, because after 35 years of searching for where I belonged, I finally understood. I had gained a sister, a family member I never knew I needed. But then Lily looked nervous. "There's something else." Looked at her. "What?" She hesitated. "I didn't tell you everything." My heart sank. "What do you mean?" She looked toward the window. "Before your father passed away, he visited me." I froze. "When?" 3 months before he died." I felt confused. Why? She took a deep breath. He came because he wanted to tell me something. I waited. He said the cabin wasn't the only thing he left behind. My eyebrows raised. What else? Lily reached into her bag again. This time she pulled out an old key. A key I recognized, the same type of key I found inside the cabin. He gave me this. I stared at it. What does it open? Lily looked at me. I don't know. The room became quiet. Then she said something that made my heart race. But he told me one thing. I leaned closer. What? She looked directly into my eyes. He said, when Ashley finds the cabin, you both need to open the last door. A chill went through me. The last door. I thought about the hidden room, the letters, the video, the secrets. How many more things had my parents hidden? That evening, Lily came with me back to the cabin. For the first time, I wasn't walking into that place alone. The cabin looked different, not like a forgotten building, like a home. We searched every corner, every wall, every old piece of furniture. Then Lily stopped. Ashley, I turned around. She was standing near the fireplace, holding the key. There's something here. She moved an old wooden panel beside the fireplace. Behind it was a small keyhole. My heart started pounding. The final door, I looked at Lily. She nodded. Together, we placed the key inside. Click, the door opened. And inside was something neither of us expected. A room filled with hundreds of photographs, hundreds of names, hundreds of stories, people my parents had helped, people they had saved. And on the wall in the center was a message written in my mother's handwriting. It said, "Everyone deserves a place where they belong." I stared at those words, and I finally understood. My parents didn't leave me a broken cabin. They left me a purpose. But hidden among those photographs was one picture that made Lily and me completely silent, because it showed my parents standing beside someone we never expected. Someone who knew the truth about our family long before we did. The photograph was old, the edges were worn, the colors had faded over time, but the faces in it were clear. My parents, Lily, and one more person, a man standing beside them, someone I had never seen before. I picked up the picture with shaking hands. Who is he? Lily stepped closer. Her face changed the moment she saw him. Her eyes widened. No, my heart started racing. You know him. She didn't answer immediately. She just stared at the photo, like she was looking at a memory she had buried for years. Finally, she whispered, "That's Michael." Who is Michael? She sat down slowly. He was the reason I left. The cabin suddenly felt cold. I looked at her. What do you mean? Lily took a deep breath. When I was a child, after I left your parents, I spent years angry. She looked down. I thought they forgot me. My chest tightened. They didn't. I know that now, she said softly. But back then, I was a scared kid. I thought everyone I loved eventually disappeared. She touched the picture. Michael was the only person who knew how much I missed them. I looked at the photo again. He looked familiar, not like someone I knew, more like someone I had seen in old family stories. Who was he to you? Lily smiled sadly. He was my social worker. I froze. The person who helped me after I left the cabin. I listened carefully. He wasn't just helping me find a new home. Helped me understand that my life wasn't over. She paused. Years later, he became like family. I looked around the hidden room. The walls were covered with stories. People my parents helped, people who found hope, and now another name was appearing, Michael. Why is he in this room? Lily walked closer to the photographs. Because he was part of this. Part of what? She pointed to the wall. A small wooden sign was hanging there. It said, "The Second Chance Project." I stared at it. What is this? Lily smiled through tears. This was your parents' dream. She explained everything. After helping Lily, my parents realized there were many other children and families who felt forgotten, so they started helping people quietly. The cabin became a place where people could stay when they had nowhere else to go, a place where people could breathe, a place where broken things could be repaired, not just furniture, people. My eyes filled with tears. My parents had spent their lives giving love away, and I never knew. Then I noticed something. One picture was different. It was newer, much newer. It showed my parents standing with Michael, but there was something written behind it, a date. Only 6 months before my father died. I looked at Lily. Your father met him, she nodded slowly. Yes. Why didn't he tell me? She looked sad. Because he wanted you to discover this yourself. I didn't understand. Why? She looked at the wall. Because your father believed some truths are better felt than explained. I smiled sadly. That sounded exactly like him. Then I noticed something else. A folder sitting underneath the picture. My name was written on it. Ashley Faith Collins. I picked it up. My hands were trembling. Inside was a letter, but this one wasn't from my parents. It was from Michael. Ashley, if you are reading this, then Daniel and Emily's plan worked. They always believed you and Lily would find each other. My heart skipped. He knew we would meet. The letter continued. Your parents were some of the most amazing people I ever met. They taught me something I never forgot. A person is not defined by what they lose. They are defined by what they choose to give. I looked at Lily. Neither of us spoke. The next sentence changed everything. There is something about your father's final days that you do not know. My hands became cold. Final days? What was this? I continued reading. Daniel knew his health was getting worse, but he wasn't afraid. The only thing he worried about was leaving unfinished work. He wanted to make sure the cabin continued helping people. Then came the sentence that made me stop. Before he passed away, Daniel asked me to find someone. Someone who disappeared years ago, someone connected to the cabin, someone who could explain why the cabin was so important. My heart started pounding. Who? Who else was connected to this place? I turned the page, but the next part was missing. The letter had been torn. Again. Just like the journal, I looked at Lily. Someone removed this. She nodded. Why would someone do that? Before she answered, we heard something, a sound outside, a car. We both froze. The cabin was miles away from the main road. Nobody should have been there. Slow footsteps approached. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Someone was walking toward the cabin. Lily grabbed my hand. Ashley, I whispered. What? She looked terrified. I think I know who it is. The door handle moved. Slowly. The old wooden door opened. And standing there was an older man holding a box. A man with tired eyes, a man I had never met, but Lily recognized him instantly. Michael! The man looked at both of us, his eyes filled with emotion. Then he said something that made my entire body freeze. I've been waiting 30 years to meet Daniel Collins' other daughter. The room went silent, because somehow this stranger knew exactly who I was, and he knew the truth my parents spent their whole lives protecting. For a moment, nobody moved. The old cabin was completely silent. The only sound was the wind moving through the trees outside. I stared at the man standing in the doorway. Michael. The person who knew my parents. The person who knew Lily. The person who somehow knew about me before I even knew about myself. My first instinct was fear, not because he looked dangerous. He didn't. Actually, he looked like someone who had carried a heavy weight for a very long time. His face showed years of memories. Years of keeping promises, years of protecting secrets. Lily slowly walked toward him. Michael! His eyes filled with tears. Lily! The way they said each other's names told me everything. They weren't strangers. They were two people connected by a past I was only beginning to understand. Lily hugged him, and for the first time I saw something I had never seen before. The little girl from the photograph. The scared child who thought everyone would leave her. She was still inside Lily. Michael held her like family. After a moment, he looked at me. Ashley. Hearing my name from him felt strange. How do you know me? He took a deep breath. Because your father talked about you every single time we met. I looked down. My eyes started burning. He did, Michael smiled softly. More than you can imagine. He stepped inside and placed the box he was holding on the table. Daniel loved you, Ashley. I swallowed. I know. No, he said gently. You don't. That sentence caught me off guard. He opened the box. Inside were dozens of letters, my father's handwriting, again, more memories, more hidden pieces of a life I never knew existed. Michael picked up one letter. Your father wrote these during his final months. My hands shook. Why didn't he give them to me? Michael looked at Lily, then back at me. Because he wanted you to find the cabin first. I frowned. Why? Because he didn't want you to only read his words. He looked around the room. He wanted you to understand his actions. I looked at the walls, the pictures, the names, the lives changed, and suddenly I understood. My father wasn't just leaving me a message. He was showing me who he was. Michael sat down. There is something you need to know about your parents. I waited. Daniel and Emily weren't trying to build a legacy. I looked confused. They weren't trying to be remembered. He smiled. They were trying to make sure other people were. That hit me. My parents never wanted attention. They never told anyone what they did. They just helped, quietly. Michael continued. When Lily left, your parents were heartbroken. Lily looked away, but they didn't stop loving her. A tear rolled down Lily's face. They kept a room ready for her. My heart broke. Every year, Michael nodded. Every year, Lily covered her mouth. They thought I might come back. Michael smiled sadly. They knew you would, Lily whispered, but I didn't. No, Michael said. You didn't. The silence was painful. But they never gave up on you. Then Michael looked at me. And they never gave up on you either. I looked confused. What do you mean? He reached into the box. He pulled out a small notebook. This belonged to your father. I opened it. Inside were notes, dates, names, memories. And then I saw something, my name, written over and over. Ashley's first day of school. Ashley's first job. Ashley's dream of helping people. My eyes filled with tears. He had been writing about me all this time. Michael said, your father watched you grow from a distance sometimes. I looked up. From a distance, he nodded. When you were struggling, he knew. My heart sank. Why didn't he tell me? Michael looked sad. Because he knew you were strong. That sentence broke something inside me, because my whole life I thought strength meant not needing help. But my father saw something different. Then Michael handed me another envelope. This is the last one. I looked at it. My name was written on the front. Ashley Faith Collins. I opened it. My father's words appeared. My dear Ashley, if you're reading this, then you finally know about Lily. I hope you understand something. Love does not become smaller when it is shared. It grows. I stopped. My vision became blurry. My father continued. I worried you would think I gave someone else the love that belonged to you. But a parent's heart does not have a limited amount. It expands. The letter continued. Lily needed us when she had nobody, and you needed us in a different way. Both of you changed our lives. Both of you were our daughters. I pressed the letter against my chest, crying, not because I was hurt anymore, because I finally understood. My parents weren't hiding a daughter from me. They were protecting a daughter they loved. Then the final line appeared. Ashley, there is one final thing you must decide. The cabin is yours now. The mission is yours now. Do not let this place become another forgotten memory. Give people the same hope we gave Lily. Give people a reason to believe they belong. I looked at Lily. She was crying too. Michael closed the box. Your father wanted you both to decide what happens next. I looked around the cabin. The place everyone laughed at. The place people called useless. The place I almost ignored. Now I saw it differently. This wasn't an abandoned cabin. It was a doorway. A doorway to second chances. But before we could make any decision, Michael reached into his bag one more time. He pulled out a small envelope. This came yesterday. I looked at him. From who? His expression became serious. Someone who knew your parents. My heart started racing. Who? Michael looked at the envelope. Then he said quietly, someone who believes the cabin should have never belonged to you. The room went cold. Because after everything we discovered, someone was still trying to keep the truth hidden. The envelope sat on the table. Nobody touched it, not me, not Lily, not Michael. It felt like the entire cabin was holding its breath. After everything we discovered, after finding the truth about my parents, after finally understanding why they left this place to us, there was still someone who didn't want the story to continue. I looked at Michael. Who sent it? He didn't answer immediately. That scared me more than anything, because Michael was someone who always seemed to have an answer. Someone who had carried this mystery for years. Finally, he said, his name is Robert Hayes. The name meant nothing to me, but Lily's expression changed. She looked confused. Robert, Michael nodded. You remember him? Lily shook her head. No, I don't think so. Michael looked at the cabin walls. He was here. I felt a chill. Here, Michael nodded. Many years ago. He opened the envelope carefully. Inside was one piece of paper, only a few sentences. Leave the cabin alone. Some stories are better left buried. You don't know what you are bringing back. I stared at the message. That was it. No explanation, no reason, just a warning. My first reaction was anger. After all these years, after everything my parents built, someone wanted to erase it. Who does he think he is? My voice became louder than I expected. Lily touched my arm. Ashley, no. I looked around. This place helped people. It saved lives. My parents gave everything to this. I held the letter. And someone wants me to walk away. Michael looked at me carefully. Your father would have been proud. I looked at him. Why? Because you sound exactly like him. For a moment I smiled, a real smile, the kind I hadn't felt since losing my parents. But then Michael became serious. However, you need to understand something. What? Robert isn't just some random person. The room became quiet. Who is he? Michael sighed. He was your father's closest friend. My heart dropped. What? Michael nodded. Before the cabin, before Lily, before everything. He looked at the old photographs. Daniel and Robert built things together. Like what? The first version of this place. I looked around, my mind was racing. So he helped create this? Yes. Then why would he want it destroyed? Michael didn't answer. Lily whispered, because something happened. I looked at her. What happened? She looked at the floor. When I left. The sadness in her voice was immediate. Michael nodded. After Lily left, everyone blamed themselves. He continued. Your father blamed himself because he couldn't protect her. Your mother blamed herself because she felt she failed her. He paused. And Robert blamed Daniel. I frowned. Why? Because Robert believed Daniel made a mistake. What mistake? Michael looked at the hidden room. He believed Daniel loved too much. I didn't understand. Loved too much. Michael nodded. Robert thought your parents tried to save everyone but forgot they had their own lives. The words stayed in the air because there was some truth in them. My parents gave so much of themselves, but they never saw it as a sacrifice. They saw it as love. Michael continued. After Lily left, Robert walked away. Why? Because he thought the dream was over. I looked at the warning letter. But now he's back. Yes. Why now? Michael looked at me. Because you found the cabin. My stomach tightened. Someone had been watching. Someone knew. Then Lily noticed something. Ashley. She pointed at the envelope. There was something else inside, a small photograph. I picked it up and my heart stopped. It was my parents standing outside the cabin, but they weren't alone. There was Robert and a little girl I had never seen before. On the back of the photo were 5 words. Before everything fell apart. I looked at Lily. Do you know her? She stared at the picture. Her face became pale. Then she whispered, I remember her. My heart raced. Who is she? Lily closed her eyes. She was another child. Another child. I felt a strange feeling in my chest. Another child my parents helped. Michael nodded slowly. Yes. How many people were there? Michael looked around the room. More than you know. The cabin suddenly felt bigger, like every wall was hiding another story, another person, another secret. Then Lily said something quietly. She wasn't supposed to be here. I looked at her. Do you mean? Lily pointed at the girl in the photo. Her name was Grace. Michael looked down, and she was the reason everything changed. The silence became heavy. What happened to Grace? Nobody answered. That scared me. Finally, Michael said, Grace disappeared. My heart sank. Disappeared, he nodded. And after that, he looked at the warning letter. Your parents stopped trusting people. The wind outside became stronger. The cabin door moved slightly, and for the first time I understood. This wasn't just about finding my sister. This wasn't just about my parents' secret. There were more lives connected to this place. More pain, more unfinished stories. I looked at Lily. She looked back at me, and without saying anything, we both knew. We couldn't walk away. Not now. The next morning, we decided to find Robert Hayes, because if he knew what happened to Grace, he knew the final secret of the cabin. And maybe he knew why my parents were so determined to leave this place to us. But when we found Robert's address, the house was empty. The neighbors said he left years ago. Nobody knew where he went, except for one thing. A neighbor handed me a small package. He told me to give this to Daniel Collins' daughter if she ever came looking. I held the package. My hands were shaking. Inside was one final message, and the first sentence made my blood run cold. Ashley, if you are reading this, then I failed to protect you from the truth. I looked at Lily, because now we knew the story wasn't ending. It was finally revealing the part everyone had been afraid to tell. I held the letter in my hands. The paper felt heavier than it should have, not because of its weight, because of the truth it carried. Ashley, if you are reading this, then I failed to protect you from the truth. Those words from Robert Hayes stayed in my mind. I sat in the empty cabin with Lily beside me. Michael stood near the window, looking outside at the trees. Nobody spoke. Because sometimes silence says more than words. I finally opened the letter. Ashley, I owe your family an apology. Not because I wanted to hurt Daniel and Emily, but because I was afraid. I stopped reading for a moment, afraid. That word had followed every person in this story. My parents were afraid of hurting us. Lily was afraid of being abandoned. Robert was afraid of losing control. And now I was afraid of what I would discover next. The letter continued. Daniel believed every person deserved a second chance. I believed he was trying to save people who could not be saved. I thought he was creating more pain for himself. I was wrong. My eyes moved faster. The truth about Grace is something I have carried for decades. My hands tightened around the paper. Grace, the little girl from the photograph, the missing piece. Robert wrote, Grace was not abandoned, she was hidden. I froze. Hidden? Why? I kept reading. Grace came to the cabin when she was 7 years old. Her family situation was dangerous. Daniel and Emily wanted to protect her. They worked with people who could help, but someone tried to take her back. Someone who should never have been allowed near her. I felt a chill. The cabin wasn't just a place of memories. It had been a place of protection, a place where people escaped pain. Robert continued. I blamed Daniel because I thought his kindness created problems, but I finally understood something. Kindness was never the problem. The world was. I looked at Lily. She was crying quietly because she understood. She had been one of those people, someone my parents saved. The letter continued. Grace eventually found safety. She grew up. She built a life. She became proof that Daniel and Emily were right. People can heal. People can begin again. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. So Grace is okay, Michael nodded. She is. I looked at him. You knew. He smiled sadly. Your father wanted everyone's stories to have a happy ending. I looked back at the letter. The final part was written differently. The handwriting was shaky, older, more emotional. Ashley, I know you may wonder why I fought against your family's dream for so long. The truth is I was jealous. Daniel had something I never had, a heart that could keep loving after losing. He lost Lily, he lost friends, he lost time. But he never stopped believing people were worth saving. I couldn't understand that, not until it was too late. I looked around the cabin. The broken walls, the old furniture, the photographs. Everything suddenly made sense. This place wasn't built from wood. It was built from forgiveness. The letter ended with one final sentence. Please don't let the cabin become a memory. Let it become a beginning. I folded the letter. For a long time, nobody spoke. Then Lily looked at me. What do we do now? I looked around. A few weeks earlier, I would have laughed at that question. I came here thinking I had inherited an old, useless cabin, a burden, a forgotten piece of land. But now I knew. My parents didn't leave me a building. They left me a promise. I smiled through tears. We keep it open. Lily smiled. For people who need a second chance, I nodded. For people who feel forgotten. Michael looked at the cabin, and for the first time I saw peace on his face. You know, he said quietly, your father always said the right people would find their way here. I laughed softly. Ha ha ha, he really planned everything, didn't he? Michael smiled. He usually did. The months that followed changed everything. The town that once laughed at me started asking questions. People who called the cabin useless started visiting. They saw the photographs. They heard the stories. They learned about the lives changed inside those walls. And slowly, the forgotten cabin became something new. A place for people who needed help. A place where old memories became new beginnings. Lily moved closer. For the first time in decades, she felt like she belonged. We spent nights talking about our parents. We laughed. We cried. Shared stories we never knew we had. Sometimes we wondered what life would have been like if they had told us everything earlier. But then we realized something. Maybe the timing mattered. Maybe we needed to find each other when we were ready. One evening, Lily and I sat outside the cabin watching the sunset, the same place where my parents had created a dream. She looked at me. You know what's funny? What? I spent my whole life thinking I lost my family. I smiled. And she looked at the cabin. I was walking toward them the entire time. My eyes filled with tears because she was right. Some people spend their whole lives searching for something they think is gone forever. A person, a place, a feeling. But sometimes what you are looking for is waiting somewhere you never thought to look. Years later, people would ask me about the cabin. They would ask why my parents never sold it, why they protected it, why they believed in a broken old place in the middle of the woods, and I always gave the same answer. Because they knew something most people forget. A house is made of wood and stone, but a home, a real home, is made of love. The cabin was never forgotten. The people inside it were never forgotten. Lily was never forgotten, and my parents' love was never lost. It was simply waiting for the right moment to be found. My name is Ashley Faith Collins, and what I thought was the strangest inheritance of my life turned out to be the greatest gift my parents ever gave me. Not money, not property, not a cabin. They gave me a family. They gave me a purpose. And they gave me a reminder that even the most forgotten places can hold the most beautiful stories. And if this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment. Tell me about the door that opened for you. Hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.